You're listening to the Higher Ideas Podcast, where ideas grow. Connect on Twitter, YouTube, iTunes, or higherideas.net. Now here's your host, I.
Hi everybody, and welcome back to the Higher Ideas Podcast. Today I'm going to talk about a challenging topic, a topic that's really hard to approach or think about for most people, and that thought is suicide. Of course, it's a very ugly thing. Even those of us who have never come to know it personally in our lives, we know it's a very tragic and difficult thing to process, and we try not to think about it. But it happens. People do commit suicide. And there can be a whole discussion just on the question of, should that person be allowed to do that or not? Should it be supported by society? Should there be a clean way to do it or not? That's a very good conversation in itself. But I don't want to talk about that today. See, the thing is, not too long ago in my life, for the first time I encountered the specter of suicide. And it was very surprising how that it hit me in the moment. See, someone I really care about was sending me text messages crafted to sound, or vague enough to sound like they were really committing suicide in that moment. Messages like, "Oh God, I did it, please forgive me. It hurts so much, I can't stop." Those kinds of distressing messages were sent to my phone, and I wasn't sure what to think of them. Should I take them seriously? Is it just dramatics? Is this just speech? What is happening? But I couldn't do anything but accept that it might be true, because to risk it being true and ignoring it was impossible. So I had to assume it was really happening, and that was a really hard experience. And of course, luckily, I kept myself in enough control to at least call another friend of this friend and have them try and reach them. Because when I tried to call, they weren't answering, which just made things much more of a panic. So in my own panic, I called this person and asked them to check up on this person, and that's all I could do, really, short of calling the police and giving an address, which would have gotten things very messy if it was wrong, if it was not true. Luckily, it wasn't true. In the end, it was more dramatics than anything. Even though the pain was real, and the sentiment was real, luckily, it wasn't actually happening. But that was my first encounter with suicide, and it caught me off guard at how concerned I legitimately got. I didn't think you go into such a panic having to consider that someone in your life that you care about might kill themselves, and not being there to make sure they're not doing it. How many people get put through this by people idly threatening suicide? After going through the experience, I can tell you, don't do it. Don't threaten it just to hurt people. And don't do it just for attention either. Because it hurts people. I saw the raw reaction of someone trying to beg someone to not, for the lack of a better analogy, go off the cliff. Saying, "Don't destroy yourself. Because I need you here, because you've got so much to give. You've got so much to offer the world. So much potential. Don't waste it. It's not worth it. Turn around." I've also had to face seeing a slow suicide. And it's a lot more insidious. It's a lot harder to spot someone killing themselves slowly. Of course, this person didn't die. This person is still alive. But it's a person in my life who seems to be slowly killing themselves with food. Overwhelming their body and not exercising and only putting in junk, and for some reason just not able to turn the ship around. It's a slow suicide. no matter what you call it. Even if it's done for comfort, the fact that the inevitable heart attack is being ignored, that's a slow suicide. And society is doing the same thing. For a long time, it's been heading in a suicidal direction. Now, this isn't coming from a dramatic standpoint. It's not coming from an idealistic standpoint. It's coming from a realistic standpoint. Climate change will occur, and eventually, from various types of destruction of the environment, we will run out of resources if we keep going the way we're going. There is no question of this. You cannot keep growing and growing and growing and consuming more and destroying more and polluting more on a planet that has limited resources and limited space and limited air and expect that to go on forever without a problem. And now with global warming starting to appear a lot more pronouncedly, and extreme weather happening, a squeeze on resources, even economies are on the verge of buckling because of generations of bad ideas and instability. Governmental systems seem to be toppling, starting to wobble. Everything is heading for a cliff on so many different levels. Maybe it's all tied together, or maybe it's all coincidence, but this is the sort of age we're living in. Sort of the early end times for the society. And that's not alarmist. That's, again, based on the facts. And projecting this path not too far ahead, it gets really bad. So, someone who cares enough about this to get up and protest, those are people who have seen the incoming suicide. These are people who have noticed this slow ramp up towards a cliff. And they care about society, so they're stirred to action. Every protest for progressive change out there is a cry not to kill yourselves. It's a begging to society, please listen to us. Don't commit suicide. We care about you. We know your potential. If we just do this instead of that, we'll be fine. Stop choosing the suicidal direction. This is madness. You'll take us all down with you. This is what's at the heart of a real, passionate activist or protester. It's all that same love, and that same unstoppable urge to try and help the person trying to kill themselves. Or in this case, the society apparently trying to kill itself. And knowing that, it's a little bit bothersome to think how disrespected protesters and activists usually are. Treated as kooks or alarmists or unorganized. How organized would you be when you're begging someone not to kill themselves? I gotta tell you, I was not very organized. I was scatterbrained. All I wanted to do was just do something. Something has to help. So of course there's a section that's panic. And a lot of people, that's how it comes out. But you gotta respect what's behind that. And you have to address what's behind that. All these issues that I mentioned, in which things are heading towards a cliff, have solutions. But it takes more of society to accept this and embrace this and see this incoming suicide before the changes will come. So if you're an activist or a protester, your job isn't only to passionately plead that society doesn't destroy itself, but you also have to get people around you to notice. And when enough people notice and enough people see the path that we're heading towards and understand for themselves, instead of you just telling them that we have to do something, when they understand why they have to do something, what's going to happen if nothing is done, then they might just get up just like you and say, don't do it. Don't jump off that cliff. So respect to the activists, and respect to the protesters. Respect to all people who are trying to change the course into a more healthy and more long-lasting direction.